The Port of Savannah is one of the busiest and fastest-growing shipping ports on the eastern seaboard. To keep up with this growth, the Georgia Ports Authority, in collaboration with the Army Corps of Engineers, plans to expand the Savannah Harbor over the next few years in order to better compete with other nearby ports like Jacksonville, Florida, and Charleston, South Carolina. The goal of the Savannah Harbor expansion project is to accommodate larger, so-called post-Panamax cargo vessels, which, along with the extra freight volume these larger ships can carry, can also bring more jobs to the area. These newer ships are too large to safely navigate the channel leading up to the Savannah port as it is, and the plan is to dredge the harbor from its current depth of 40 feet to around 47 feet, as well as to widen the channel in some areas to make room for these massive ships. There are, however, some potential drawbacks to this planned expansion.
We draw all our freshwater supplies in the southeast coastal plain here from the Floridan Aquifer. And it lies below the surface, and it's a large limestone aquifer that extends all the way to Macon and Augusta. And overlying that is a protective layer, we call it, it's aquitard, it's a confining layer of less permeable material, a lot of clay. And that protects the aquifer from surface water, for example, like saltwater. This is the thing that prevents saltwater from moving into the aquifer, and by dredging and making it thinner, we're risking accelerating the already existing saltwater intrusion problem.
So the concern is that dredging the harbor will thin the confining layer that protects the aquifer below. The thinner this barrier is, the more it allows saltwater to permeate into the freshwater aquifer, increasing the salinity. Any salt in the water must be filtered out before the water can be considered drinkable. The more salt water that breaches into the aquifer, the costlier it is to remove. And since most cities in southeast Georgia obtain their freshwater supply from the aquifer, any damage to this resource is of great concern. On the other hand, there is much to be gained with the harbor's expansion. The added jobs will greatly improve the economy of not only the Savannah area, but Atlanta and the rest of Georgia as well. Vice President Joe Biden visited Savannah and spoke about the harbor project, calling for an end to the debate about the harbor's expansion.
What are we doing? We're arguing about whether or not to deepen this port another 7 feet? Folks, look, it's time we get moving. I'm sick of this stuff. It's time we go. And folks, this is not a partisan issue. This is an economic issue.
Now, they've been dredging the harbor or the entranceway to the river since, I think in the 1800s they began this. Ever since Savannah became a port, they've continued. As ships evolve, they continue to have a deeper draft, and so they've been dredging this channel for a long time. So now this is just the latest in a long line of dredging operations.
According to a document released by the Army Corps of Engineers, the estimated cost of the project, expected to begin later this year, is around $652 million and will be paid for by both the state of Georgia and the federal government, with the state covering 30% of the overall cost. This document also states that after the project's completion, the harbor will contribute $174 million annually back into the economy and will create about 2,400 jobs in the local Savannah area and approximately 11,000 additional jobs nationwide. The Corps of Engineers also concluded that the threat to the aquifer by dredging is insignificant compared to the saltwater intrusion caused simply by overusage due to Savannah's expanding population and industrial use. The Savannah area has already had a problem with saltwater intrusion for some time, simply from pulling too much fresh water out of the aquifer system. This removal creates what is known as a cone of depression. The removal of water from the aquifer creates a cone-like trough in the water table. This creates negative pressure, inviting saltwater from the Atlantic to move inward to fill the void. The extreme usage of the aquifer's resources, combined with the thinning of the confinement layer, only hastens the intrusion of salt water into the aquifer system.
So the idea is you're just removing additional time. Every foot of aquitard gives you more time for that salt water to slow up. So that's you think of it as more as the thicker it is, the more time we have before the salt water effect gets through. Now, they could take that water and desalinate it, and that's more costly. And it is not just cost of treatment, but building the treatment plants. So it's not a matter of running out of water, it's having to pay more for our water because you'd have to desalinate water that isn't the quality that you want.
The bottom line is that a deeper harbor allows larger ships to transport more goods and commodities at a lower overall cost, while reducing congestion in the harbor. But with this chance for economic growth, there is a trade-off that could, in the future, increase the cost of municipal water in the Savannah area, with the burden of higher water bills falling on Savannah residents. Chris Wilkins, Channel 99.